Doing stretches.
Get some stretches, stretch it out. How do we start this one?
Getting that podcast energy
up. Welcome to the Unwritten Earths Symposium, a podcast where I sit down with my good friend Epodiah Ravishal to talk about games and game design and play design. Is that a thing? Is that separate from game design?
I'm good with that. I've been having some fun using the term roleplay as like where people would normally say role-playing or role-playing game. In some respects, it's sort of like how when people are like 30 head of cattle, right? Mm-hmm. Not 30 heads, not,
sure.
you know, like I don't know why, but I'm just like, yeah, that's good role-play. Mm-hmm. Instead of like, that's good role-playing or that's a good role-playing game. It's good role-play.
Is that the opposite of verbing a noun? Is it nouning a...
gerund?
Parts of speech off the dome is not my forte.
I mean, here's the thing. I'm a bitter man, and I don't know if that ever comes through on this podcast, which is about me talking to my good friend Nathan Di Paoletta about role play. Deep in my heart, I have a grudge against computers.
This is why you wish to master them through the power of closure. Is that?
Yes, exactly. But more specifically, the fact that computers have won the role-playing label.
Oh, the RPG label.
The RPG label. Like, they're CRPGs. They're computer role-playing games. If you call them RPGs, you're dead to me. That's all. That's just how it is.
I feel like there's an inflection point in the sometime... I mean, I'd even say not that long ago, maybe late 2010s.
I feel like it happened on Twitter. Yeah,
and it probably happened on Twitter, where it flipped from saying RPG and then context usually told you what you were talking about. Like in the 90s and 2000s, it was CRPG, and then people stopped saying the C, but it was just context, and then eventually adding tabletop to differentiate.
Yeah.
Okay, someone can do I am not going to do this work, but someone could do the work to see if this corresponds with Critical Role. I wonder if...
Oh, that's a good question.
If those... Not that there's necessarily a causal relationship, but I wonder if that transition happened at the same time that, like, there was a big popular AP stream that became part of that cultural conversation.
My assumption, which is probably not true because that's what assumptions are, was that hashtags, like we needed a way to say, here's a hashtag for just tabletop role-playing games, and you don't have to weed through things that aren't tabletop role-playing games to do it. But yeah, I think I just, at the beginning of this, before we started recording, I said one of the great blunders is arguing about genre on the internet. And this is precisely where we're going.
I'm looking up an additional data point about this real quick. I'm looking at my Kickstarters that I have run. And sometime between when I launched Worldwide Wrestling 2nd Edition, it must have been 2019 because I fulfilled in 2020. So in 2019... I did not specifically put tabletop role-playing game. We did for One More Thing because that's like a board RPG hybrid. So I call it a narrative tabletop game to try and accurately capture that. But in terms of putting this is a TTRPG in the title of the Kickstarter, I started doing that with the Big Store, which was last year. Because I was like, oh, this is what people expect, but this
is what they're looking for.
Yeah, this is just like how indie games became a marketing phrase.
Right.
TTRPG is now a marketing, this. If this is how you find the customers for this kind of thing, you put this label on it so that the right people find the thing they're looking for. So for me personally, I came around to it sometime in the last 4 years.
It's like how if you go on, I guess it's called Max now, whatever streaming service was once HBO, and you look up any Batman movie, you can look in any genre because they're tagged all the genres. That's just my Max experience, is that I'm like, hey, tonight I'd like to watch a movie about mysteries. Oh, here's all the Batman films. Oh, tonight I'd like to watch an action. Here's all the Batman films. Some sci-fi. Here's all the Batman films. A romance. Here's all the Batman films.
The most accurate tag for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this gets to the difference between a category bucket-based system and a tag-based system, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you and I are of the, I would say blockbuster generation. We're used to like there being a limited number of something and you had to put it in a specific physical location.
Right.
To find it. And that's different than every road leads to Rome. None of this has to do with role-playing games.
Or does all of it have to do with role-playing games?
Mm-hmm.
We have some topics to talk about.
Yeah, you can.
In a break from tradition, we actually planned out a couple things to talk about. And one of them that we have on our list here is coffee and game design.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about coffee and game design. All right, so we like them both. So here's the deal. Many, many, many years ago, I might even say over a decade ago.
Probably. I can mark this time in my memory as well.
Yeah.
It was when I still lived in the first apartment I lived in Chicago.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right. So here's the deal. Role-playing game designers end up at parties that have nothing to do with role-playing games. Just the usual, like, it's a holiday party or it's a get-together or whatever, filled with people who are interested in role-playing games and people who aren't. And the experience is you've got a bunch of people who are interested in role-playing games that want to talk about it, but they don't want to be antisocial. So they kind of wait until this party peters out to a moment where they can all go off into a room together and have their secret conversations. And this felt wrong on a couple of levels. Like one of them is just like it's a little antisocial, right? Like you're at, I mean, like it's fine. You could talk about things you enjoy and you love at parties, but if you get us going, we might talk so much we'd have to launch a podcast, right? So my solution to it was to create a space where it was okay to just sit and chat about role-playing games and role-playing game design. But then that's its own problem, right? How do you create a space?
Right.
That's a thing that we're exploring with this podcast or whatever. The solution to that, and this, I mean, I'm going to toot my own horn here. I'm going to say this is a brilliant solution, and I'm going to say that this is one of the most important things I've ever done in my life. We all know how hard it is to get a group of people together to play a game. That's famously an impossible problem. Mathematicians for forever have been like, this is not a solvable thing. So my solution was to reduce it to the simplest form, which is me and one other person. And to say, me and that person are going to be at such and such a public location, usually a cafe, drinking something, usually coffee, and talking about role-playing games. And then just saying, you're all invited. Oh, at a certain time.
Right.
This location at this time.
It is not a hidden information problem where you have to divine the third thing out of the two public things.
Right. And so, worst case scenario, me and this person, who, let's be fair, 99.9% of the time was Emily, my wife, who's also a role-playing game, Emily Carebaugh, role-playing game designer. Emily and I would be somewhere, and we would just talk about role-playing games while we enjoy hot beverages. She's not a coffee fan, but it's fine. The point is, usually other people would show up, and we'd have like a group. It was, again, just open permission to talk about role-playing games. What made this work was that you didn't have, like, again, you didn't have to schedule with a group of people. You didn't have to decide who could and couldn't come because you were saying, it's just me and one other person, and you're welcome if you can make it. Obviously, people have different constraints on their time. And if you keep doing it at the same time, you're going to like exclude some people, maybe like if they have children that have to, like the solution there is that you just pick that one other person that you organize with is just one of those people who can't make it to the usual time. And you say with them and just schedule a time that works solely with them.
The difference between like game night at the cafe or whatever is not that this is an event that happens at a time.
Right.
It is that this is these two particular people.
Yes.
That are inviting other people who happen to be available to join them.
everyone has permission to talk about their wild game designs.
Mm-hmm.
So I bring this up because we are, as part of our larger goal, recent events, as recent as 5 years ago, 4 years ago, no, about 5 years ago now, COVID, kind of shut that down. But also in general, the coffee and game designs that I was organizing, they got big. They got really big. Lots of people started showing up. I say really big in a way that makes it sound like hundreds, dozens at some point. And when that happens, it starts to feel like a little unwieldy because you're just like, oh, how do we make sure everyone is like, no, it's not the goal.
Yeah, now you're like running a small convention, like off the cuff, and it's like that's actually not what we're trying to do here.
No, if you want to run a small convention, run a small convention. But if you want to do coffee and game design, 2 people and whatever happens. Anyways,
well, you got too popular. That was your problem. That's always your problem.
Yeah, it's always
too many people want to hang out with you.
Well, it wasn't that. It was just like, here's the thing. Here's another thing that happens in groups, and this is actually a thing I've noticed a lot in play culture. If you have a large group of people and you're like, oh, let's get together and play games or whatever, and we'll mix and match, like these people play in this, whatever. Eventually what will happen is people will find compatriots. They're going to find people that they really enjoy playing with, and they'll just spin off and do their own thing because they no longer need that structure. That's good and healthy. Like, I want to be very, like, I know it looks like, oh no, our thing that gathers people together is getting smaller, but that's actually kind of what you want. You want people to make connections and work independent of you. So, okay, COVID hit, put the nail in the coffin for a while. And haven't been doing coffee and game designs. We did a picnic and game design over this past summer, which was a lot of fun. A lot of people showed up. But I guess what I'm doing is putting the blueprint out there because it is a very local event.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. People aren't going to travel for it. Or if they are, that's a decision that needs to be made.
Yeah. Again, 10-ish years. This is, peak Google Plus era.
In
my memory. I too was inspired by your tales of coffee and game design and did a couple similar things in Chicago. So same model where it was like me and this other person, and I usually was able to rope Tim Kopang into doing it, which was great. Yeah. Designer of Mars Colony and Heroes Banner, other classics that you've never heard of.
Yes.
But just like, sometimes there's people where it's like, for whatever reason, you need to make reasons to hang out.
Yeah.
Like have a podcast, for example. Like you really like hanging out with them, but you just don't naturally have orbits that intersect. So you like have to make it happen. Anyway, so I'd be like, hey, Tim, let's go hang out. Let's do coffee and game design. And then that was an open, anyone who wants to come. But that's the thing in Chicago, it had to be a little strategic because it was like, what neighborhood are we going to be in? Because the big cutoff for people's ability to join would be travel, right? Mm-hmm. It's a big community of people, but if people lived on the south side, they probably weren't going to come up to where we were. Or if we did an event that was more like in the loop, that would probably have more people, but also it would probably be more expensive and it would be a different, it just, and it's a different vibe. That neighborhood has a different vibe than like the neighborhood that like I wanted to spend time in. You
don't know how long a coffee game design is going to go, and a lot of places are not friendly to large groups of people or groups of people just hanging out forever, right? They're like, we're a business here, buddy.
Mm-hmm. It's not like this was an impossible task, but this was it had to be a little more formal just in terms of like kind of taking like a straw poll of like who's actually interested in coming.
Right.
Because like if we pick a place where all the people who are interested in coming are on the other side of the city, that's not meeting the goal. Because we're not in the situation of just blasting out to the community and assuming that everyone who could hear about it will, right?
Right, yeah.
Anyway, so we did, I think maybe 3 or 4 over like a year. It was definitely a positive experience. It was a little more structured in that like a lot of the people, I think, let me know if I'm off base here, but I think when you're doing them in Greenfield, you generally know a lot of the people who show up.
No, actually, that's not necessarily true. There's a lot of people that do show up that are like new to me from time to time. Like, yes, there is a contingent of like a core group of people that like I do know. It wasn't like I'm getting a bunch of strangers together each time.
Right.
Yeah, we do get people from far afield that like I had never met in real life, but we knew each other online. Or, sure. But yes, I could see there being a difference between like me and like 6 people I just saw the week before,
right,
and like 3 other people who I've never met, versus like 2 people that know each other, and then everyone else is like
4 people who are like, this is the first time I'm meeting any of these people, kind of thing.
Yes, yeah.
Again, I don't know how your conversations generally went. We usually had a little more structured, like, okay, so what are you working on? And like, just talking about what people's games were and what problems they were having with their game. Because it was all, designers who wanted to talk about games.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually think a little structure is good. We had the advantage of friend of the show and scholar IRL plus scholar on the Discord, Evan Torner, who was living up this way around the heyday of coffee and game design, and knows how to run an efficient meeting. I don't even know if I ever said this out loud to him, but I like really appreciated being like, all right, there's a lull. Here's a bullet point. Let's go. Let's do this, but like, we're designers here. I mean, it's easy for us to come up with like
structures
things
to talk.
Yeah. It's literally what we're doing.
Anyway, so I just wanted to throw in a little, complimentary story about my experience with the coffee and game design system, such as it is.
So basically, yeah, my goal in bringing it up and putting it on our agenda was that I just want to like remind people that they can do that. However, you do it to feel safe too. That's the other thing. We can do them online. Actually, I've been thinking about doing some in the Discord to see what happens. It's a little bit difficult online. Yeah.
The vibe is a little different when it's like the bunch of squares.
Yeah,
bunch of square viewports, not.
Yeah.
The people are very interesting and cool.
That's fine. It's because there's one channel communication where in real life you can break off into groups. Like if you're excited about something that someone has said and they're willing to talk to you about it, and like the rest of the group has moved on to something else, that's comfortable and fine. Like everyone you don't have to have like one person presenting to the crowd, but like online you have to have one person presenting to the crowd. I should say not online, but like using video and audio chat.
Yeah. There has to be there's necessarily a little more structure about who is talking and who is listening. I wonder if a model. I mean, it's an experiment, right? Like you could just try and kind of see how it goes. I wonder if a model could be a little more of like a co-working thing.
Yeah.
It's not like, hey, let's hang out and talk. It's more of a like, I'm going to be working on a thing and I'll have my video on and, we can just, anyone who drops in, you're working on a thing, but we also can kind of like chat, or we can just both work, but there's another person that, kind of like a body doubling thing. Like there's another person who I know is working, and just having that dynamic working, whatever you're doing, writing or drawing or, whatever you're working on. But having that social avenue open as part of the thing.
A couple of years ago, I tried to do on Twitch, I called it Knight Rider.
Yeah. Oh, I remember the Knight Rider.
Yeah. Because I was jealous. People program live, people draw live. I was like, maybe I could design a role-playing game live. And it turns out that like I could, but it requires me setting aside nighttime that I'd need otherwise to do other things. Like it just became like, oh, this is a fun project, but it is it is taking too much of a chunk of time. But I want to say this is kind of a neat idea. I think it'd be fun if it's just like a couple people who, I mean, we might try it at some point when we start working on the pet crimes. I was trying to remember if we had a title for it.
We don't have a title for it yet. Yeah, that might be a good thing. Yeah. At some point, this is, no promises.
Yeah.
But yeah, at some point, I think it's worth doing, we'll try something in the Discord and just see how it feels. And if it is a fun thing, reflect on whether there's a digital, is there a way to kind of get the same, because the point of the coffee and game design, and correct me if I'm wrong, But to me, the point of the coffee and game design is to be like, there are people who care about the same thing you care about and who want to engage with it on the level that you want to engage with it. And here's a venue for doing that. And it's not goal oriented, like we're going to do playtesting or like we're going to plan a convention or something. It's just like nerds who are really into a thing love to talk to other nerds who are really into a thing.
You have express written permission to do so in this time and place with these people.
In the manner of perhaps a symposium. It is a place to come together and talk about things that are of shared interest. Before we get much farther into this episode and talking about all these other exciting things, we are also making a point to make sure we assign homework this week.
Oh, yes. Let's make that happen.
We took our winter break, our break between semesters, where it made sense for us not to have homework, both because we forgot and because, holidays. More of which I'm sure you can hear about in Plus Expenses. As I imagine we'll probably go over how those were for us. But we do have a really good game assignment challenge, an assignment to do a game assignment.
This came from one of the scholars on the Discord, Fred, who sent us a link to a bot on Mastodon, a Mastodon bot at botsin.space. So it's bots, BOTSIN.space at random color contrasts. I think we'll put a link in the notes. Pick a day and a time to check. That's now. And at the appointed time, look at the most recent set posted on the random color contrast bot in Bots in Space. The rule book to pick will have the spine and or cover that most closely matches that color set. So Bots in Space provides two contrasting colors. The most recent one on my screen is one of my all-time favorite color contrasts.
For our purposes, we should further randomize which one we're picking, right?
Right. Yes. Should we roll a die and count down that many?
Sure. Let's do that. So what are you rolling?
I will roll a d20.
Okay. I will roll a d20 as well. I will use a random number generator because I do not have dice next to me.
I coded one up myself. I rolled a 1.
Nice. 14. Well, then you get your really good good choice. All right, I'm going to count down 14 of these.
I highly encourage people to play along at home because I think this is a fun thing to do.
I'm going to take a screenshot of this. I think will be the best way for me to
I could do the same.
Do that.
You're not the only one with screenshot capabilities.
I counted down 14 posts on this bot, and my color combo is Purple Heart and Pale Prim, which is kind of actually very similar to the Unwritten Earth's purple. And a kind of a pale yellow combo. Yeah. So I find it very aesthetically pleasing. It does not immediately bring a book to mind, so that's good. I get to make a judgment call about, dig in and see what I can find that's close. And again, the assignment is close, so I think...
Yeah, we're not going to get it exact.
Yeah, we're only answerable to ourselves for making this pick. But yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes to these, but for the record, Purple Heart is... code 7156E0 and Pale Prim is FFFBB8.
That is a pale color. I can tell by the hex code. I got Violet Eggplant and Starship, which is like a violet purple and a limey green. I would say a radioactive green. It's the kind of, if you're like, hey, we're gonna name a green starship, that's the kind of green you're looking at. And that is Violet Eggplant is 9E40BF and Starship is E1F950.
So we both have kind of a purple, and mine's more yellow, yours is more green contrast. So we'll see if we'll end up picking the same one. Depends on what's in our library.
I think I know which one I'm going to get. This one, the immediate thing that this one evoked is the original Deities and Demigods, which is a book I could go on and on about, but I have another one here that I actually think is a closer fit than the original Deities and Demigods. But I just wanted to call out the original Deities and Demigods. Yeah, I'm excited. We got some homework.
Thanks, Fred, for the challenge. I think that was one of our goals was also to not have to come up with all of them ourselves.
Right. So yeah, we appreciate the effort.
Yes. And yeah. And also, so yeah, I'll link the bot in the show notes. It is administered by Colin Mitchell at Muffinista on Mastodon. I was about to say on Hyperspace. I don't know why. I think just because of these colors.
These colors, yeah.
And Hyperspace sounds like a thing that could be a social network. Why not?
It's truly a very soothing exercise to just scroll through these. I love just like palette generators and things like that. They're
and specifically these are high contrast palettes is the idea.
Yeah.
If you're looking for some accessible pairings.
Yeah. And they're gorgeous.
The one I have is slightly lower on the lower end of the contrast spectrum of what most of them are here. But yeah. Anyway. All right, cool. So we will do some bookshelf searching and come back in our next episode with game discovery.
Yes, game discovery. Yes. We don't want it to sound homeworky, even though it is, and we look forward to it.
I think this is our first formal war story. What are war stories when we share them on the podcast so our listeners know what they're getting themselves into?
We've been at this collectively for 100 years.
Approximately.
Approximately. But we've been at this for a while, and we've learned some things through trial and error, through personal experience. And we're going to, from time to time, just to share a little tidbit, a little note of something that happened to us that maybe you might want to, there might be a lesson in there. I don't know.
It might be relevant for stuff that people are doing as designers or publishers, but it might be kind of like behind the curtain kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But we just one of the things we want to do with the podcast is to have a little bit of here's how this stuff actually works sometimes.
Right. When I thought up war stories, the first thing I thought of was just the last PAX East I went to where I wore Chuck Taylors, and I learned that spending an entire weekend on a concrete floor in a shoe with no support meant that I blow my knees out.
Yeah,
and I learned a lesson. Anyways, that is kind of in the nature of what these war stories are. Here's the thing that happened to me. So the Unwritten Earth Symposium is a going concern. We are a legit business. We just filed in the state of Massachusetts for our LLC. So we are a limited liability corporation because it's Nathan and I working together. And one of the things that you don't have to do this to publish games. You don't have to have an LLC to publish games. But if you're working with another person, there's just a lot of things that like you want to have explicit, and this process helps you bring that out.
Right. Yeah, and so just as a point of comparison, we both have basically been sole proprietors for our careers.
Yeah.
Which is in the US how you do a one-person company you don't have to file stuff. Depending on your municipality, you might have to have some kind of formal registration, but generally you are a sole proprietor. You run the business and it is you. And you are one and the same with your business.
Yes. And one of the purposes of a limited liability corporation is so that if one of us does something bad, the other person isn't automatically on the line for it. But okay, that is neither here nor there. We're not giving business advice there.
This is not business advice. This is about your mail.
Yes, this is about my snail mail. This is about my postal mail, because I'm the one in Massachusetts. I registered it, and on the date that I registered it, not the date it became effective. It didn't become effective until a minute after midnight, January 1st this year. But on the date I registered it, at least 3 ne'er-do-wells in the state of Massachusetts slipped something in the mail to me. Each of them are these forms that look very official. They come from places that have names that are clearly fake but sound good, like corporate certificates, business posting department, business Posting Center. I think that's what this one says. No, sorry, Business Document Center. And they're vaguely threatening things like, oh, this is a thing you need done by this date. It's going to cost you somewhere between $80 and $90 to get it done. One of them is like, I have to put a posting in my house about labor laws for my employees, which are me. And they want to charge me like $80 some for that poster, even though that poster exists. It's free online. It's a PDF. I can just print it up. There's other ones that want me to be a certificate of good standing. There's two of them are all about that. Not a thing. Again, they're just, I don't legally know if they're fraud or if they like have enough wiggle room in how they word things, because they're very cagey about how they word things.
These are we're calling you about your car's extended warranty of LLC and I assume other corporate filings.
The only reason why I'm bringing it up as a war story right now is just to let our listeners know, if they end up doing this and they do an LLC and suddenly they get like mail that looks official, look into it. Don't just send somebody money because they say they're from the government and they have a P.O. box in a town next to the seat of government in your state.
This isn't to say you're not going to have to do some weird, seemingly way too expensive for what you're getting registration things with your, state or local government, because, that's how taxes sometimes work. But go to the source to find out what you actually need as opposed to respond to the letter, right?
Yes.
The state of Massachusetts will have a resource for you to pay for your certificate of good standing if that is what you need. And if it's not on their website, then it probably is not real.
So there you go. That's your war story. They might be more interesting. They might be more about printing in the future, or they might be about just knowing how much your books weigh before you figure out where you're going to park at a convention. Like, that's important. But for now, that's what we're sharing.
Well, thank you for sacrificing your mailbox
It was fun
for the sake of our business.
I'm collecting them. I'm reporting them, but I'm collecting them. I'm a grumpy old man.
So at the risk of leaving this episode without discussing any actual games, because that would be a shame, I posted on the Discord about how I was doing a little bit of Google Drive cleaning, deleting stuff that had been like shared for a project from 6 years ago. And, I just didn't need to have all those files taking up my Google Drive allotment, etc.
Yeah.
And I came across a folder that I was like, it's because of my demographic, I've been rewatching the Lord of the Rings extended movies over the holidays. So it's the Gandalf, I have no memory of this place.
Right.
Bit. I have no memory of this file.
Yes.
It was called The Shadow of the Reckoning. And I clicked into it. And I was like, oh, I remember what this is. This is a set of notes where I was taking the turn of the century White Wolf game, Hunter the Reckoning. So this is pre-becoming Onyx Path, doing Chronicles of Darkness line, etc. This is the World of Darkness game line, Hunter the Reckoning.
I am literally decaying inside because of the turn of the century term.
I think it came out in 99, maybe 98. Yeah. I'm not going to look it up right this second.
In the late 1900s.
Yes. There are 2 or 3 games where I'm like, yeah, that's my game. For reasons that generally don't seem to be aligned with why other people like it necessarily, which is fine. And Hunter is one of them. And we can talk about that another time. But this particular set of notes was for adapting that game into the rule set for The Shadow of Yesterday, which is a game by Clinton Nixon from the 2000s. Came out of the early Forge era.
Formative to a lot of design in that branch of the family tree.
I don't know all the details. Clinton kind of stepped back from doing game stuff a while ago, so I don't know what the status there is. But the game, the main rules are still available under a Creative Commons license and have been put on GitHub.
Oh,
I'll put that link in the show notes.
This is the same one that's in that called Solar System.
I know that Arrow, so another, member of the community from, is he from
Finland?
Is she from Finland? Okay. He's a Finnish designer and, thinker. But he republished it like later in the 2000s. So there is a print publication of this game. There is a republication that Arrow did. And then, I guess the Solar System is like pulling it out of the setting and just having the rules for it.
Yeah, a little more just settingless.
Yeah. We would now probably refer to that as the SRD for it. Anyway, this is all to say you can read this game. I'll put a link in the show notes. It's a fantasy game in the world of Nier, which is a no gods, no masters, funky fantasy setting. There's a lot of designer notes in the text about what Clinton was thinking about and what he cares about in games. So like for some nice clear context, you can read the text. But there were a couple insights that this game had that I think, as you said, were pretty formative to a lot of things that descended through many games, including I was skimming it in preparation for this, and I was like, oh, there's a couple things that I don't know how conscious or not they are, but there's like, that is also an Apocalypse World. Gaining character things advances is like in this text. Ending your character's story conceptually. I mean, that also comes from some other stuff. But the idea of like, oh, my character is done and is going to move on from this story and maybe I'll play a different character or whatever is in here too. Anyway, the point here isn't necessarily to talk about my hunter conversion, even though I think it is kind of cool.
Yeah, I want to hear about it. But go on.
I mean, just briefly. So how Shadow of Yesterday works is your characters have pools of resources that you use to like do stuff, right? So you're spending points from your pools for things like your secrets, which are kind of mystical or narratively unusual abilities. The example in the text is like you have the secret of you can always pull something you need out of your pockets, no matter how much you're like searched or like whatever. Or you could have a secret of some kind of like arcane magic, or a secret of having an animal companion that understands your words. Like those are all secrets. Secrets. And then you have keys, and keys are the XP system, and it is very, very hackable, and this idea really got into a lot of games, but I just really like the purity of how the basic rules here are. So your key is a goal or a vow or an emotional tie or something that basically matters to your character, right? And then you have thresholds for gaining 1 XP for doing a thing that's in line with your key, 2 for something that's more of a greater magnitude, 5 for kind of like what you might envision as this is the key story point for this character. Like this is the main thing we're waiting for them to do, over the course of their arc. And then you have a buy off, which is if you reject your key, if you turn against this thing, you abandon this quest or whatever.
A heel turn.
Yeah, a heel turn. That is a cue to erase that key. That's no longer part of what your character that's no longer what your character cares about. And you gain 10 XP, which is like a lot.
A lot.
Yeah, which is basic, which in the basic rules is 2 advances, essentially.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Anyway, it's a lot. So those two things, the pools and the keys, map onto Hunter for me mentally, and the secrets too.
Yeah.
So the pools in Shadow of Yesterday are Vigor, Instinct, and Reason. Hunter the Reckoning. So in this, you are hunters. You are these normal people who have gained clarity about the existence of the supernatural in your world. Vampires, mages, werewolves, all the other game lines from White Wolf.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
The premise here, right, is that all of those other kinds of characters have these mystical veils that keep normal people from seeing them. Vampires have the masquerade, changelings have glamour, like whatever. There's a in-universe reason and usually a mechanical effect for keeping your supernatural kind hidden from mortals so that you can do all your stuff in the shadows or whatever, in the world of darkness. And so hunters are people who have had those scales fall from their eyes, can see these creatures for what they are, and see the danger that they present to mortals. And through this understanding, gain these supernatural powers to fight these really powerful non-mortal creatures. And then in universe, in Hunter, there's a big debate over like where does this come from? Is it an innate human thing that's finally responding to all the terrible things that are being done to us? Is it a gift from God? Is it some other supernatural force that is using us as a tool to fight these other ones?
Probably gray aliens.
Yeah, probably gray aliens. And so there's meta plot, about the advancement of this argument and what happens in the world to change what people think, etc. Anyway, hunter characters are organized, the splats in that game, the kind of character you can have, are organized around three pools, essentially, of zeal, mercy, and what's the other one? Zeal, mercy, and innocence, I think.
Okay, that feels good. I like the sound of it. Yeah,
it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So this conversion, is okay. So your pools, instead of vigor, instinct, and reason, are zeal, mercy, and innocence. So instead of having edges, which in the White Wolf general system, you have dots in a thing, and each dot gives you a new power and whatever. So those are all chains of secrets, which also has some way that it works in Shadow of Yesterday of these stacks of abilities that you can do. And then the keys map onto the splats, basically. So instead of being I am a not really remembering all of them, but an Avenger is one of the main kinds of characters you can be, and your main attribute is zeal, and you're all about fighting monsters. So in the conversion, instead of I am playing an Avenger, you're playing a character who has the Avenger key, and that would have
that's how specific, you get your experience.
Yeah. And then that has this additional benefit of you're able to change, your philosophy essentially.
Yes.
In a much more fluid manner than the core game allows you. So those were just some of the insights that I was oh, cool, this all maps. And it was very much I really like the setting, and I like the vibe, for lack of a better term, of this game. But this rule set would let it play in a way that is more matching to how I like to play the games, these days. My notes are from 2007, so...
Wow, okay, yeah. I mean, I figured they went back, but that's
So this is I am remembering all of these things anew as I'm talking into them.
I love that sort of thing. I mean, the smashing of two games together, it really, I don't know, gets my brain working in ways that I don't know if it's, okay, let's set aside capitalism poisoning.
Yeah.
And
if we must.
Yeah. And we're just gonna play. We're making a game we're gonna play with friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is totally the zone of this of this conversion. Yeah.
Man, I eat that up. I really do enjoy taking a game setting and ideas that are born in that game's mechanics, and then finding another game mechanic or game system that it maps enough onto that where it doesn't map onto, there's new insights, right?
Right, yeah.
You're the amalgamation of the two has a thing where the gaps are that makes it or just where one of them fills in a spot that the other didn't, that kind of thing. Okay, now taking the capitalism poisoning again. That's good. That's good. If your goal is to make good games, that's good training, right? That's a good project to just pick two games that you have in your collection and slam them together. I mean, obviously you want to pick ones that speak to each other, right? In some way that are in conversation.
That's the art of it, I think, or at least that's where that juice of being oh, and also, that comes from finding those two things that have enough congruencies to flow together, but enough differences to require you to decide, how do I fill these gaps to get
Yeah.
To either get the promise of the game that I'm adapting into a different system, or to get the benefits of the system that I'm adapting into this, premise.
One thing that the keys offer that is a very clean understanding of what their purpose in the story you're telling is, right?
Yes.
I remember back in the day playing this game with a group of friends that we were using Solar System to play a game, and we just abandoned the keys because they were superfluous to what the play style that was going on at the table was, where they were just engaging with it, and then nobody was taking the advancements. Nobody was paying attention to the fact that everyone was doing all the things that the keys were asking.
Exactly. Yeah.
They weren't motivated to do it by the keys. They were motivated by the character itself. But that doesn't mean that the keys are bad. It's just for this particular play group or whatever, it kind of fell out. But why that it happened, I think, my post-mortem on that, is that the keys have this very clear focus, which is about, this is the story I want to tell with this character. And then when you look at things like the World of Darkness stuff around that era, or just in general, class systems, and things like that, where, what is a fighter? A fighter could be just a career that the character had. It could be, there's a lot of generic terms that we could do that don't answer this question at all. Or it could be the type of story we want to tell with this character, right? And that is not clear like keys are. So taking this sort of character type that can be any number of things and just saying, oh no, this is what we want out of the story, is an interesting exercise.
It's, instead of describing the character by their premise, it's defining the character by what you are going to play them into. So you can
fate, maybe,
perhaps, yeah. I mean, and I think something about the keys, especially again in this style of play, and people who are into this style of play, the keys are formalizing a thing that a lot of people are doing anyway. And so in that way, if you're already doing it, you don't really need them. But if you're not doing it, they give clarity into what you need to do in order to play in this style.
I mean, even if you don't need them, they point to what you're supposed to be doing with the game, which is good.
Right. I was just going to give a quick example of a key, because in case this is a little abstract.
Yeah, we should have a little concrete. Yeah.
Lord of the Rings Extended Edition. I'm not sure exactly how this would be phrased, but Samwise Gamgee, one of his keys is about supporting Frodo. So this key is a character relationship, arena key. The key of the gardener. Something like maybe your character cares more about Frodo than he does himself. Gain 1 XP every time you encourage him to go the next step on his journey. Gain 2 XP every time you make a meal in the wilderness and remind him of why he is on the journey that he's on. Gain 5 XP every time you physically keep him from putting on the ring because it is dangerous for him, right? And then maybe the buy-off, which I don't think he ever... and then the buy-off is say goodbye to Frodo, right? And that doesn't happen until the very, very end when he goes to the Grey Havens. Yeah,
and then he levels up into an Avenger.
Right. Well, then he levels up into a dad, right? I think the what we see into the thing.
Yeah.
So it's giving you these little markers. This is what I want everyone to see this character doing, right? Yeah. And then a flag for, this is the line where I have a big character shift.
Yeah.
Is the
yeah. That you may or may not cross.
And then you can have lots of like rules around that if you want, around stuff like changing those numbers, formalizing how you develop those thresholds.
Right. I think that's actually part of this, having that stuff clearly stated and written out is already doing a job, right? Like it's already doing a job in like, as I go through and I'm like, oh, I need to pick a key for my character. And I pick this one, I'm already thinking about the character like that.
Right.
And I think like that job alone is really good. and then like you could do things like add like rewards for it and like mechanics built around it or whatever. But like, explicitly stating some of that stuff can be very, very helpful, guiding, character creation and just deciding, just when you sit down, because sometimes you come back to a game. I've been thinking about this one a lot too. Sometimes you come back to a game like 2 months later and you're like, I can't remember the silly voice I did for this character. I don't know why they're hanging out with this group of weirdos. Like, what's my deal? What's going on?
Yeah.
Would you call that an arcane gem? Would you go so far as to...
Yes, I would go so far as to say that as an arcane gem that bubbled up out of some other things and a brief conversation on the Discord.
We did it.
Yeah.
We arcane gemmed.
Yeah. So they're not dependent on doing our game discovery homework.
Right. Exactly.
Is part of what we're trying to say here. Yeah. And I guess if anyone is really into Hunter the Reckoning, let me know.
Speaking of the Discord.
Yes. So one of the other things we want to do on the show is answer questions. Not just assume that people want to hear all the things that we're talking about. LLC spam notwithstanding. And so you can ask us questions. You can send an email to our email is over on our website, unwrittenearths.com. You can also submit a question through the contact form on the podcast website, which is at unwrittenearths.fireside.fm. But probably the most effective way to do so is to join the Discord and ask us there. So we have a couple questions from scholars, and I think we're going to select one that kind of fits in with stuff we've been talking about this episode.
Sure, yeah.
We'll continue to field questions as we go. But as per usual, we were like, we don't have anything to talk about. And now we are definitely around where we wanted to be with our recording time. So
yes.
From what has been asked over there, which one do you want to talk about?
That's a good question. Did any of them strike you as...
There's some good questions.
They are.
Some of them, I think, should have more time dedicated to them. Do you want to talk about a friend of the show, Michael Miller?
Yeah, let's do it.
And I think this is relevant based on, talking about coffee and game design, etc. How do the two of you think about the differences between self-promotion, blatant shilling, community engagement, and the like?
Whoa, okay. It's a good one. Yeah. Okay. So the reason why I had a little sigh there at the beginning, a little groan, is that this hits, I guess the word would be a personal. Really, every time I mention my own games, I cringe because I think I feel like a shill, I guess is what it is, which is not the case. Like, first of all, I have to talk myself out of this. So let me talk everyone out of this. If you don't talk about your games, who will? Let's just start with that.
Right.
Your game is an idea that you want to put out there into the world. It's part of a conversation that you're having. And that means you have things to say about it. If that means you have things to say about it, you should say those things. People are excited about your ideas and specifically how they relate to your game. So I want to encourage people when they talk about games to talk about their game specifically. Sometimes it feels gauche to be like, oh, we're talking about this, and then I have a mechanic that deals with that, right? But no, why would you write that mechanic if you didn't want people to know about it, right? Like, why are you doing this if you don't like? So I guess I want to sort of speak to that inner editor, that inner critic that's like, you're being too self-serving or whatever, and just be like, no, if it's relevant to the conversation, say it. Like, I want to hear about your game. That doesn't address all of this question. That just addresses why I groaned at the beginning of this question. I have that inner critic, and he is a jerk.
Yeah. Co-signed. I mean, I think the main differentiator here is context, right? What context are you, or in what context are you talking about your work? Because there are some contexts where blatant shilling is the thing to do.
Right, yeah.
Every so often someone posts hey, I'm looking for games that do X. Self-promotion welcome, right?
Yeah.
If someone posts that and your game does X, go shill.
Do it.
They're asking you to shill, right?
Yes.
That is an appropriate space to be like, my game does X. I'm really excited about it because of these reasons. I think it's a great fit for what you're talking about. If you want to check it out, here's my itch page, right? Like, or whatever. Like, do all the things because that's what that space is for. obviously that may be more or less effective depending on the nature of the ask or the venue that is being asked. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so there are some places where like shilling is necessary or required or desired. Mm-hmm. At a convention, when someone is like, hey, tell me about this game.
Yes.
Right. When someone is holding the game and is waiting for you to convince them to buy it.
Right.
Shill away.
In a previous episode, we kind of went into like, you have to do that a lot to get good at doing it, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so I recommend doing that a lot at conventions. Mm-hmm. A well-composed shill for your game is exciting. Like, I want to, if I come to your table and I pick your game up, I would like to hear that it also tends to be like on the short side and just hits the notes. And if I'm excited about some of them, we can go deeper into that, but it like just hits the notes. And it's so humane compared to like a poorly composed one, which goes on and on and on.
Yeah. So there's that. I think one reason that we are working together is that I feel like we have different strengths in these areas.
Right.
So for example, I'm comfortable saying that you are much better at community engagement than I am.
Oh, we're in trouble.
I would say that the way that Epi posits ideas and shares thoughts based on the things that you are actually working on right now creates a space where other people want to talk to you more about games.
Right.
And that's not necessarily about like, so now I'm going to click through to your website and buy Swords Without Master, though you should in issue 3 of Worlds Without Master. But there's a sense that I have always had that if I just want to talk about games, Epi's a great person to talk about games with, hence this podcast. But I think that's something you've cultivated over time by having a very open avenue of dialogue with other people who want to talk about things that you're interested in. And also you are genuinely interested in so many different things that a lot of different people can vibe with that. So I think that the community engagement part is both conscious, like coffee and game design, right? That's a conscious effort to create and maintain community, but it's also an attitude. Right. And like I feel like you have a much more communitarian attitude than I would describe myself as having. And that is to your benefit over time, to give you some flowers there.
I appreciate that. I mean, okay, so when I talk about games online, first of all, like I look for excuses to talk about my games online because I know that people have to be reminded that the games exist. Like, same with me. Like somebody might mention a game, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. I don't have the pocket money right now to buy it, but it's cool. And then it disappears. And then months later, somebody else mentions it. And I'm like, oh, that's right. I don't have the pocket money right now, but that's cool. And then months later, and eventually, you buy it. This is just the nature of things. Like,
I mean, that's the nature of why advertising,
right,
in our current system, advertising has a place. You either jump on something immediately, which is great, or you need to hear about it 10 times, right? There's very little in between for, the kinds of stuff that we're doing. Anyway, continue.
So one of the things about that then is I personally don't want to end up like the car insurance commercials that I see all the time over and over again. They're funny. I appreciate the art that goes into them. I'm never going to use your service.
Right.
And so I'm just constantly just being blasted by these ads. So to avoid being that, right, you don't want to like just keep saying the same thing over and over again. This is one of the reasons why I have an allergic reaction to Kickstarters, because that requires you to say it. Like it crunches the time period. So like I would prefer to wait like a few weeks before I mention my game again as a thing, unless I have something new to say, like an exciting new thing to say.
Right.
But I often when I talk about it, I pick some aspect of my game that is, I think, interesting to talk about, right? Like here's how this game handles violence, or this is how this game is, like, I really like how these dice work because this is how these dice are going to work, like, and that kind of thing. Or in play, one of my favorite moments is this, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And all of that, I think is helpful. There are 3 games that I did not right, that I think I have done more for than I have any of my games. There's obviously the Bullwinkle and Rocky role-playing party game. It's a brilliant game. I don't know what to tell you. And like Tunnels and Trolls is a game that like I've talked about in the past that like gets a lot of traction. And to a lesser degree, but one of my favorites is the Sanguine Usagi, the original first edition Sanguine Usagi, which is not the first Usagi Yojimbo game.
The first edition Usagi Yojimbo game by Sanguine.
Yes, exactly. And what makes that happen is just I have a love for the game, and so I just want to talk about the bit that I love.
That's the key.
Right.
Have a love for the game.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so that helps.
Is there something in your game that you love? Share that with the world. And
people are good at telling whether you're sharing something out of love and excitement or you're sharing something out of a
algorithmic necessity.
So to get to the other part, which is like self-promotion, right? And like Kickstarters, etc. Don't hate the player, hate the game, right? Like, if you want people to pledge to your Kickstarter, you got to talk about the Kickstarter every day. That's just, it's just what you got to do. Like, and everybody, in my experience, the majority of people in our space running Kickstarters grit their teeth and post again because they know you got to post again. And you know what? You post again and someone else pledges and you go, all right, well, I guess that was worth it. Right. Like that's, and whether that's running some ads or whether that's just, doing a social media post every day, send out to your mailing list at the beginning of the campaign and the end of the campaign. Because the fact of the matter is that every time you post, a new person sees it. Right. And that's the point.
What I want to say, because I know that like the urge is to think of like a Kickstarter that you've seen past your, it's a thing you're not interested in and you just see it posted about over and over again for a whole month. And I know we all have that experience, but also I'm almost certain, I know I've had this experience where good friends of mine have Kickstarters that are over before I realize they've even launched a Kickstarter.
Right.
And like, I need you to realize that second experience is sadder to me than the first one. The first one is whatever. That's water off my back.
Yeah, that's just the water in which we swim, basically. Yeah.
I am really good at ignoring ads. I'm good at it.
Yeah.
Like, I've been training my whole life.
Everybody is, right?
To the point where I ignore ads from my friends. So like keep doing it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying is just like, there'll be people who are like, oh, that's just a Kickstarter and that's fine. They won't. I don't think they'll hold a grudge. It doesn't matter. It happens.
You forget about it immediately, right? Like,
yeah.
If it's not a thing that you're engaged with as an audience member, like once it's gone, it's gone.
Like obviously, a lot of Kickstarters they fund it, so it's out there. I can buy the game. That's fine. But like, there's sometimes they don't fund, and it's because it's not necessarily because of my money, but like me and a dozen people like me who missed out.
Yeah, so I guess the question of like thinking about the differences, I guess for me, I go into a different mode. I put on a different hat or like whatever the metaphor is, if I'm in promotion mode, then I'm thinking about, where am I posting? When am I posting? How many ads am I buying? If I'm doing ads, when do I send out to my mailing list? And those are my main things. Mailing list, maybe some ads. And now posting on Blue Sky. Posting didn't mean anything for like 3 years, but now it's back, baby. So that's nice. But that's like an alignment where I'm like, okay, here's my promotional post. Here's my promotional energy. And that's different from like, oh, people are talking about wrestling. Someone tagged me about my game. Do I have anything to contribute here? Or am I like, oh, hey, cool, thanks. Right? Like, I want to acknowledge that I'm being referenced. Sometimes I also have something to say, and sometimes I do not. And if I don't, it doesn't benefit anyone for me to be in like, yes, and you can buy the game here, right? Because like that's not what the conversation's about.
Yeah.
But if it's a conversation where I can add value, maybe that ends up converting some people to check out the game or whatever. But that's my goal in that conversation needs to be, what do I bring to it to make it better? Not how do I try and get people to click on my link? And that's not my promotion energy. That's my community
love of
energy.
The game.
Yeah, that's love of the. Yeah, that's being there for love of the game.
I'm having a revelation, personal revelation, because I think one of the things that I have, one of my Kickstarter fatigues is that I sit down, I'm like, okay, I've got to post about the game. And then I want to make it a love of the game post when really all people need is just me to remind them that the game is in the Kickstarter, right? Like, so there's a little bit of like, I'm trying to write an opus about my game when all I need to do is be like, hey, did you remember the Kickstarter?
Yeah.
And that actually causes like some fatigue. So just, I mean, being aware, I bet, helps. Like just being like, oh, this is the thing I got to do.
Because those are all mismatches if they're in the wrong place, right? If you're shilling in the community space, that sucks. No one likes that. If you're talking about love of the game in a shilling space, that actually can be, like you were saying, that's actually inhumane because you're like explaining all the cool things about why your thing is cool for 20 minutes. And this person's like, I just wanted to give you some money. I just needed you to tell me 3 things about the game that I think are cool.
Yeah. I just need an excuse.
Yeah. Pair any 2 of these 3 things, and I think you find mismatches.
I often do like a post that's just like, hey, you have a copy of Swords Without Master because you probably bought a bundle, a charity bundle that has it in it. Because that's another thing too. If you want to, like, if you're just like, I need to just mention my game, I recommend saying, hey, I've done this game. I just need to mention, I need you to know about it. And if you have a game you need people to remember exists, just reply or just share this with a game that people need to remember. Like, that's cool.
I will link this in our show notes. This is an example of exactly what you were just positing that people can look at. Spencer Campbell, Gila RPGs. I assume it's Gila because I'm from the Southwest. If it's Gila, I apologize. Anyway, Spencer posted on Blue Sky, designer friends, what's your unsung hero game? That game you really love that doesn't get as much love or attention as some of your other games. And then I'd love to make a collection of them on itch, like the Proudest Games collection. Feel free to leave links below. This was a great opportunity for me and many other designers to jump in and be like, hey, I have this game that exists, right? And in my case, it's Imp of the Perverse because it's my best game. But anyway, there's an example of what you were just, kind of talking yourself into out loud, where it's like, oh, here's someone giving a permissible space for shilling. And then everyone who's reading that thread is interested in, oh, what do designers think are their most unsung games, right? Like, that's an interesting question. And then people are finding games there and mentioning them and saying, oh, I have this, I should run it, or like whatever. And that's been a really positive shilling experience, for lack of a better term. I apologize if that sounds like a backhanded compliment, but like, because we're talking about it, that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. We're like, that's positive shilling energy.
PSE. Yes. Positive shilling energy.
Well, thank you for the question, Mike. Always appreciate.
In the middle of all that, we talked a little bit about like when people mention your game, and I have this like weird thing where I'm like, I feel like I need to tell them something because they mention it. I have this desire to be like, okay, I need to make this conversation worth their while. And so I'll like them mentioning it, and then like an hour later they'll get a response. It's just like, thanks. Because it's just I just sit on it and I'm like, I've got nothing else to say. So anyways, if you've experienced that, that's what's happening, is that Epi is thinking about and appreciates what you say about his game, but just has to spend an hour working up the courage to say thanks.
Speaking of shilling, big thanks to Michael for the question. You can check out his great games, including With Great Power, which is a foundational melodramatics superhero game over at ipressgames.com. Yeah. And he and Kat Miller also made a very cool game about, it's called Serial Homicide Unit. And it's
classic.
You're tracking down a serial killer game, which, if that's interesting to you, it's a good one. It's presented as a series of audio files that take you step by step through the game to teach you how to play, which is very cool. Yeah. Anyway, we're willing to shill for our friends on this podcast. I think I'm comfortable saying that.
Absolutely. Speaking of shilling, where can they find you on the internet, Nathan? We got this.
Yeah, that brings us into saying goodbye. You can find me on the internet over at ndpdesign.com. You can find Epi on the internet over at dig1000holes, the number 1000.com. There are links to both of those websites over at the Unwritten Earths website. Mm-hmm. So you can find out more about this show, subscribe, join the Discord, etc. over at unwrittenearths.com. We're also on YouTube. You can look us up on YouTube. If you listen to podcasts on YouTube, that apparently is working. So you can check that out. Unwritten Earths Symposium is a podcast done by us. Yay, us.
Yay, us.
Our music is by Will Yobst. Thank you very much, Will. You can find Will everywhere on the internet at will.com. And yeah, I think that just brings us to our final question, which is, Epi, have we made a game yet?
No, absolutely not. We put the cart before the horse on this one.